That's right. This was never about helping sellers out. This was about trying to get buyers to buy more items from eBay.
Whoa, time out. This is a bad take. This is absolutely a bad take. Okay, because in order for the transaction to complete. Hey, what's going on, loungers? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mason T, and I am a 20+ year importer and product developer. But more importantly, I have been on all of the major e-com platforms for just as long. So recently, there has been a change to eBay's feedback system, and we'll get to that in a second. But today's real lesson is about the importance of dedicating more time each day to reflect on your life as a business owner. We often remind each other to treat it like a business, but the truth is that only works if you start with the right mindset. Without it, you end up chasing things that feel urgent but aren't actually worth your time. So in this week's episode, we'll be highlighting a video by Second Chance Picker, and I'm going to allow him to provide the full context of his argument.
A couple weeks ago at eBay Open, eBay announced that sellers are going to be receiving automatic positive feedback on transactions that were delivered on time and had no issues reported. At that time, I personally thought that this was a huge win for the reselling community. However, now that it's September and it's officially rolling out, not only have my opinions completely changed on this topic, but the way I'm running my business moving forward is completely changing as well. But first, let's talk about what this is. Previously, in order to have positive feedback on eBay, a buyer would actually have to go on and review you as a store and give you positive feedback. That was the only way to receive it. Moving forward now, eBay is giving automatic positive feedback to any seller who sells an item when a customer doesn't leave positive feedback within the first 7 days of delivery, the item was tracked and delivered on time, and there were no issues reported to eBay. As long as you meet those three qualifications, you should start seeing positive feedback racking up on your eBay account. In fact, I've received a bunch of this right here in the month of September already. And all of the positive feedback coming automatically from eBay says the exact same thing. Order completed successfully, tracked and on time. I have a bunch of these, and so don't every other seller on the platform that has sold anything in September that has been delivered. It's pretty basic. It's not anything special, and it all sounds the same. However, the one thing I thought when I first started seeing this and hearing about this was that it would help bury negative feedback. If you sell enough items on eBay, you will occasionally run into a buyer who actually goes and leaves you negative feedback. Whether it's warranted or not, you're going to end up receiving some negative feedback. Sometimes items arrive broken and there was nothing you could do about it. Other times the buyer's just not happy with their own life and they're going to take it out on you on a review. And honestly, it's not the end of the world. Everyone knows we can't please everyone, so a few negative feedbacks has never really slowed down any of my sales on eBay. One of my strategies in the past when I got negative feedback was to try to bury this negative feedback. This meant that the more positive feedback I got, the lower that negative feedback would end up on the list.
You just said it wasn't going to slow you down, so what's the point?
No one would ever see it. Not only that, but more positive feedback would increase my number, making me stay in the high 99 percentile versus dropping down to say like 96.
Right, it would suppress it on the first page so that you don't instantly see it. But for anyone who cares about negative feedback, they would just click on negative feedback and then sort your feedback just by negatives, wouldn't they?
The more positive feedback I got, the less that one or two negative feedbacks actually affected my account. This is now easier than ever. In fact, I can actually look and know exactly how many items I need to sell in order to move that one negative feedback to the next page. And this is just due to the fact that I now know when an item is sold that I'm going to receive feedback on that item as long as I meet those qualifications. Therefore, I can kind of just know how many items it's going to take to sell in order to bury that negative feedback. This is a huge win. When the feedback was originally announced, I talked about it in this video.
Again, you're saying it's never really slowed you down. So where's the need to bury the feedback, right? So it's like you can't set up the premise saying that like it doesn't really matter, and then this is all the things that I did to try to suppress it. Like it kind of doesn't follow each other.
Here. I also talked about in that video how I would include thank you cards in all of my packages going out the door, asking for positive feedback. I have done this since day one. When I first started selling on eBay, my very first item, I wrote a hand note thanking the customer for the purchase and asking for positive feedback. I did that for a while, but I quickly outgrew writing handwritten notes. Instead of always having to handwrite the cards, I eventually moved on to having them designed and ordered through Vistaprint. On the card, I would thank the customer for their purchase. I would thank them for supporting me as a small business. I would ask them that if they have any issues that they send me a message prior to opening a return. And I would ask for positive feedback, saying that every positive feedback that I receive, I leave the buyer a positive feedback.
Do you think that's right to coerce a tit for tat, kind of like, you know, if you leave me one, I'll leave you one, kind of thing? I don't necessarily agree with that, but you know, sure, if it works for you, but I don't think you should do that.
I never had any issues with this system, and I actually thought it was quite a nice touch to include something in there just thanking the customer for their purchase. When I did this, I believed that it would increase the rate I would receive positive feedback, and it would make it clear that I'm asking the buyer to message me prior to opening a return.
See, the thing about these handwritten notes is that they're very good in the beginning, but ultimately, when you think about how the buyer is buying stuff, if you have a seller that you want to buy something from and they have 50 positive feedbacks, 100% feedback rating versus somebody who has 500 feedbacks, like at 99, 98% plus, you know, what is really the difference? They're all very low risk. They're all very compliant sellers. So that's kind of good enough. Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to worry about customer service and all that other stuff. But as far as the feedbacks in the beginning, you want to write something because you want the customers to do you a favor. Because when people are buying from new sellers that don't have any feedbacks, they're technically doing you a favor, right? They're helping you out. They're taking a chance on you when you have no track record whatsoever. So I totally agree with, you know, writing the handwritten letters and stuff like that. However, the idea of, you know, first of all, requesting tit for tat and stuff like that, I don't think the messaging should really be that way. I think the handwritten letters should be more of an appreciation as well as an unsaid way to let the customer know that you care very deeply about your reputation. And therefore, if they have any issues whatsoever, you would proactively jump in to help them out. That's really what that's about, that reassurance. And because of that, people might trade, you know, a positive feedback saying, wow, this seller really cares, and say something nice, again, as a favor to you.
Because sometimes I can help prevent a return from ever being requested if they were to just reach out to me. So I try to put that in all of my thank you cards. I have always wanted the buyers to have the best experience possible. I ship my items with care, I take good photos, I list any flaws, and if there's any issues, I want to take care of it for the buyer. And I let them know that. I truly believe that most people,
That's the right
buyers
attitude.
and sellers on the eBay platform, are good people, and there's a very select few that actually abuse the system. But the comments that you guys left on that video tell a completely different story. Some of you guys said you hate asking for positive feedback, and some of you said that it even leads to actual negative feedback or more returns. Here's just a few of the comments that you guys left on that video. I used to ask for feedback and I quit that as well a while back. Don't ask for trouble is what I say. Never ask for feedback. Some people buy things and forget about it. Poking the bear might result in neutral or negative feedback if they were not happy with their purchase.
I think we have to define the line between letting the customer know that our reputation is very important to us and any positive feedback would be deeply appreciated versus please give me positive feedback, like asking for something, you know, because you're kind of assigning a task now. That feels a little bit different. This is about the pathos of expressing yourself.
Justified or not, and could even result in a return. No feedback has always been good feedback. As a buyer, I really do not like companies/people asking me to do things. I bought something.
Well,
I
compared to a
didn't buy a
negative, of
job.
course,
Honestly,
no
these
feedback is
comments
good.
kind of caught me off guard. I personally never thought putting a card and asking for positive feedback in every package would ever upset a customer or even encourage a return. In fact, I think quite the opposite. I want people to know that I stand behind the items I buy. I want people to feel comfortable reaching out to me if there is an issue so that I can resolve it. I would rather be involved in the return process rather than letting eBay handle the returns for me. If I can avoid having the customer open a return, I am more apt to offer partial refunds or see
Then you
what we
should
can
just
work
leave a note
around.
saying that.
However, when a customer just opens a return request and eBay automatically hands them a label, I'm kind of cut out of any chance I have of ever fixing whatever issue that customer may have had. Now, it's hard to know for sure if I ever made a customer mad or upset by asking for positive feedback, or if I even received returns because I mentioned in there that I want them to be happy with their.
See, here's the point that offsets the whole argument is that you ultimately end up saying that it's really hard to know for sure. And ultimately, that's the point of this whole video. Once you start to admit that there's no way of ever truly knowing, then why are we spending so much energy on this kind of argument? You see what I'm saying? If you know pretty certainly that nobody can ever truly know the answer to something, then I think we need to start channeling our energy into other areas that matter.
Items. It's hard to know whether someone would have returned the item just because I put the card in there saying to message me if there's any issues. There's really no way for me to know one way or another whether
Right.
that card made any difference. But I'd be curious to know what you guys think. Regardless, I have completely
What
changed the
does
way
it
I'm going to
matter
be
what
handling
we
these
think?
cards moving
Nobody
forward.
can know
Now
for
that
sure.
feedback is automatic, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't need the customer to leave me feedback anymore because it doesn't matter. So instead, on that card, I'm going to be focusing on asking the buyer to come back to my store and buy more items. Instead of taking up that space
That's
asking
wishful
for the
thinking.
positive feedback, I'm only going to focus on trying to get that customer to come back to my store, follow my store, and buy more items from me.
You know, it really depends on your store. It depends what kind of items that you have. You know, for most of us, if you are selling consumable items, then people could totally be repeat customers very, very often. If you're selling things that are like snacks or poly bags or, you know, things that people will go through, you're selling ink cartridges, if you're selling, you know, sticker sheets or something like that. Yeah, sure. You know, but if you're doing one-off items, one and done listings, and your store looks more like an antique boutique collectible kind of thing, would they come back? Yeah, some, but usually not as much. So to really, really focus on the repeat customer, uh, I don't know. It's less. My point is just that it's less likely than what people would like to imagine.
Comment no feedback has always been good feedback, has never
And I'm a
been
guy
more
who keeps
true than
selling the
right
same
now.
thing.
If
You
the
know,
buyer doesn't leave any feedback, who cares? eBay's going to handle the feedback for them. So there is no point in me asking for buyers' feedback anymore, especially when space is limited on sending these cards.
I wouldn't say there's no point. See, this is what I mean. You don't spend enough time thinking like an entrepreneur because you still have the flip side to that same coin, which is not just about acquiring positive feedback, but also a possible prevention of neutral or negative feedback. Now, again, coming back to the same point of we cannot know for sure, but the attempt is made at preventing negative or neutral, letting them know that we care very much about our reputation. So if you could speak to me first before pulling the trigger on anything or jumping the gun on something, that would be much appreciated. So, you know, you kind of put in a very cordially written card, and I think that's good enough to get the point across. So I wouldn't say, let's just chalk it up to now we don't have to do anything anymore, because that auto-generated positive feedback is still not guaranteed.
I am better off spent spending my time and money focusing on trying to get that customer to come back and buy more from me than trying to
It's just
leave
that the
me
customer
any kind of
loses their
positive
voice in
feedback.
7
Now,
days if they
when
don't
this
act.
automatic feedback was first announced, I was actually super excited. I thought it was a huge win for the reselling community. But not everyone thinks that this is a positive thing for the reselling community. And I actually think that they have some valid points. In that video where I talked about the positive feedback, you guys left some comments, and here's what you said. I think the automatic feedback is ridiculous. The sellers that want to collect feedbacks are tinkled pink by eBay, literally just told every seller that feedback doesn't matter. I do not want automatic feedback. It's going to be bad. It's great for sellers who get bad feedback. I hate it. Totally ruins the whole meeting. The thing that makes feedback so good of a tool to prejudge whether a seller or a buyer is a good eBayer, because people have to put effort into getting good feedback. You have to impress the customer enough to go out of their way and post that your store is great. It takes effort. That makes the feedback you get incredibly meaningful.
Yeah, on a personal level, true. But as for the feedback system read by other buyers, how much do they really care about a glowing review versus a passing mark? You see what I'm saying? Because ultimately, I think whether or not the seller is compliant is what really matters the most. So personally, if I get a big thank you from someone, sure, it's very heartfelt, it's warm, it's meaningful, great. But how much does another buyer care about the glowing review or glowing recommendation of some other stranger, especially if you're selling a whole bunch of items that might not even really be related to each other? So you might buy, a DVD or something, but then somebody else was upset about their Blu-ray player or something like that. And, they're kind of decoupled, unrelated to each other. So while things could happen, if it's a small blemish every now and then, people understand to overlook something like that. So they really don't need, all the flowers and, cupcakes and balloons, on top of your feedbacks.
So now feedback will totally be watered down and as useless as an Amazon review. I am not happy.
I disagree with that, because if you successfully complete your listings and you have fulfilled your obligations, does not count as legitimate? Was that not legitimately earned? I did every single thing that was asked of me, and I fulfilled my obligations in a timely manner. How is that not legit?
And I actually get their points here. It's very true that now feedback isn't going to carry the
It's just
same
not as
weight that it
emotional
did
anymore.
prior to the automatic feedback. Sure, our stores are going to have more feedback than ever, and it's going to be easier to hide negative feedback than ever. However, buyers are going to see.
I wouldn't say it'd be easier to hide negative feedback than ever, because you could still click on the number and sort by negative feedback. And for any shopper who cares about what your red flags are, they are going to click that button no matter what. And it's very convenient, and it's at the top of the page too. So I wouldn't say that.
That the majority of our feedback is now just coming from eBay itself, and they may lose trust in us and the platform overall.
Why would they lose trust in us if the feedback comes from eBay, not from us? I'm not too sure about that.
However, I would argue that eBay is a billion-dollar company, and they don't just do things on a whim. They probably have a bunch of data to back this up. In fact, when eBay announced that they were doing automatic feedback, they said it was to increase buyer trust on the platform. That's right. This was never about helping sellers out. This was about trying to get buyers to buy more items from eBay.
Whoa, this is a bad take. This is absolutely a bad take, okay? Because in order for the transaction to complete and eBay to make money, it has to be done through the transactions of every single vendor that is involved on eBay, right? So if the seller doesn't make the sale, eBay doesn't make the sale. You just framed it in a way as if sellers are getting cut out of the deal, where, buyers are more trustworthy, and then eBay makes the sale. He just said eBay makes the sale. No. Even though the sale is made on eBay, eBay is not the one making the sale, right? We are the ones who are making the sale happen first, and then eBay gets a cut of the sale. So definitely, if it causes more buyers to openly, freely want to pull the trigger more often because of trust, then definitely as a byproduct, sellers are going to benefit as well. So I disagree with this. This was a very bad take. To make it sound like, it's Mr. Birds and like, ooh, only eBay is going to make the money. No, we're definitely going to be benefiting along with this.
Versus other platforms. More sales means more fees, which means more profit for eBay. It's just business for them. And if they can increase...
No, more sales of more customers is going to draw more sellers, because sellers go where the money goes. And this is exactly why the ecosystem is what it is in Amazon, because all of the resistance points is removed in Amazon. Amazon does the fulfillment. Amazon has the better prices because they have the most volume. Like all the things, it's fulfilled by Amazon. So there's almost no reason to not purchase from Amazon. They've taken all of the hesitation away. So that creates an ecosystem where people are less window shoppy over there, right? Versus on eBay. And eBay needs to do the same thing if they are to remain as a competitive marketplace. And when that happens, more buyers, more trust, more transactions will automatically equal more sellers. One would follow the other. It is a progression. So to make it sound like, oh, sellers are cut out and it's just between buyers and eBay, this is just not how it works.
Buyer trust in the platform and sell more items by giving us positive feedback, they're going to do it. And actually, they probably have really good data and some studies.
So yeah, absolutely, there's going to be more fees, but it's not more fees per transaction. It's going to be more fees because there's going to be more transactions. And I think that's a win for all three parties, from the buyer, the platform, and for the sellers. So no, it's still a win so far.
Behind them when they made this decision. Companies of this size don't just go out and try things. They don't just go out on a whim and say, let's give all the sellers positive feedback and see what happens. They probably know that if they give us enough positive feedback,
you got to be careful. Like, if you begin your arguments with the word probably,
now there may be other unintended consequences of them doing this. But as far as they're concerned, if they can increase buyer trust on the platform, that means that they will sell more items to more buyers, which means more fees and more profit in their pocket.
Again, you're framing that eBay is doing the selling, not us. No, we're doing the selling.
It's not going to carry the same weight as it used to.
It doesn't carry the same emotional weight.
Customers are actually going to go in, dig into your feedback, and say, hey, look, this guy has a bunch of automatic feedback, but no real feedback. This feedback is all faked from eBay. None of this matters. But
whoa, this is another really bad take. These feedbacks are all fake from eBay. Now you are moving into the realm of collusion. This is very, very different. You're saying that, like, eBay is just giving us free feedbacks and stuff, as if we didn't have to properly fulfill our obligations and complete the task of three things, right? Basically, item as described, item intact and received, right? Delivered in a timely manner. Like, we have to fulfill these obligations before we are deserving of these auto-generated feedbacks of a pass and no pass system. So first of all, I argue that this is a legit pass, right? A marking on your record, as well as, this take to frame it this way is fallacious.
Let's be honest here. The majority of people that buy on eBay barely look at photos, yet alone will never read the description.
There's no favoritism.
And almost certainly will never dig into the reviews and actually go through them and see if they're automatic, if they're user-generated, or if they're just a bunch of lies. The only thing customers are concerned about is that big positive number at the top. When they see that someone has thousands of positive...
See, here's the thing, right? When you look at this 99.2% positive feedback, what are you really thinking in your head as far as buyer psychology? You're thinking to yourself, well, that means that there's a less than 1% chance that my transaction will not go smoothly. Exactly. And in that less than 1%, let me just double check if it was just, a isolated incident of some crybaby, or it was actually a legitimate concern that might be a deal breaker for my deal that I'm trying to go through, right? So that's exactly what it's all about. Does it really matter if all of the positive feedback has emotional weight to it? That's what it is, because that's what makes a regular review into a glowing review, as opposed to a pass or no pass type of system.
Positive feedback, and they have a 99.9% positive feedback score. That's going to increase their trust. Most buyers are never going to go further into the reviews than just by looking at our
How much more does it matter to know that your seller was awesome
to be made
versus
that
your seller
buyer
was
trust may
compliant?
go down, because if buyers do dig into it and realize that eBay is the one giving us positive feedback on every single thing, they might say, hey, that positive feedback doesn't really mean anything because it's being given by the platform they're selling on. But on the other hand,
see, he's just trying to say that the feedbacks have no meaning just because it doesn't carry emotional weight.
Increase sales on the eBay platform. And in fact, padding reviews is kind of common practice, whether it's Amazon farming reviews.
Ooh, this is a really bad take.
Business asking for a positive review.
See, now you just framed it as padding reviews. I don't think eBay is padding any kind of reviews. If you are artificially inflating stuff, for example, if we're on Google and then I tell all of my employees to go get a Google account and then leave us positive feedback, that would be padding the reviews. If you are doing the same thing where you're getting friends and family to buy your Amazon product and so that they can leave reviews, that would be padding the system. And if you are caught, you will get banned. That is very, very different than the platform giving you a pass or no pass for being compliant. Again, you know, you can't be framing something like this. This is two very different things. One is collusion and the other one is well-deserved.
On Google for free stuff. This kind of stuff happens everywhere. Reviews don't carry the same weight as they used to because they can be bought and sold, because they can be manipulated to only show the positives.
Right, but you're not buying and selling anything. This is the eBay giving it to you.
Have you ever gone to a Shopify store and seen any negative reviews on there? Of course not. Companies spend good money making sure that the majority of their reviews are very highly ranked. Now they'll throw...
This is very different now. You have control of the platform when you're talking about something like Shopify, as well as my own website with PegasusBlueprint.com, right? Because I use a WordPress website. I could put as many stars as I want. I could write fake reviews. That's why I don't leave any reviews on my website, okay? Because I could do, I could control all of it. I can manage all of it. So we can't, this is another realm that we're talking about. You don't control the eBay platform, and I think everybody is well aware of that. So this is very different than to suddenly bring up Shopify.
Throw in a few lower end reviews just to make sure that you believe the reviews are real, but the majority of this is all going to be farmed content anyways. Most people don't have the time, the energy, or the effort to go digging into reviews and trying to figure out whether it's a real review or a fake review, or if eBay gave us the review. Or
I really don't think you should use the word farmed content, because if it's a legit farm, then that's legit content. So I pulled up a browser. We're on the eBay website right now, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit for you guys so that you can see exactly what the customer perspective is when they are checking out stores. So this is an actual store, and then we click on the positive right here, and then we can see the amount of positive feedbacks that they have. Now, if you take a look at this, the box is checked for show automated feedbacks, so that people know exactly what is going on. Now, the default sort is to sort by the most relevant. So they would also have to go out of their way right now to click on most recent to see what's going on, because this is the first month that eBay has rolled this out. And we're going to get into more exactly what happens as a side effect of this later on. So you can see that there are, you know, a couple of real feedbacks over here, as well as order completed successfully and tracked and on time. So the issue with this is that I feel as if there's no confusion for the customer of what is happening. So while being a reseller is very simple to get into, reselling on eBay is also overly simplistic. When you break it down, there's only 4 main steps that you have to handle: sourcing, processing, listing, and shipping. And of those 4, sourcing is clearly a priority, because if you don't source goods, there's nothing to process, there's nothing to list, there's nothing to ship. That makes everything else the BCD priority. Now, here's the problem. the advice that gets kicked around with most reseller content about sourcing, it's overly simplistic, right? So it's weak because it's incomplete. And because they've never done more than just the basics of e-commerce, it explains exactly why their content spends so much energy sweating the BCD stuff. You've seen it with endless videos about pull boxes and poly bags, thank you cards, listing tips, tricks, hacks, and of course the come pack with me content. When we all know listing a desirable item is what matters most. Again, coming back to how proper sourcing is still the priority issue. If you fix your sourcing strategy, everything else that comes after that will be a cakewalk. Yes, the gurus give you the same recycled buy what sells, sell what people buy over and over again. But what happens once you've successfully made the sale? How do you repeat that process? How do you scale it? And that's the gap that nobody is filling. So I wanted to share with you guys that even in the comment area of this very same video had a lot of pushback comments because people are actually very well versed in this particular situation of both leaving feedbacks as well as receiving feedbacks. So Kirk LS says, a sale with eBay's automatic feedback shows that the order was completed successfully, that it was tracked on time, and that there were no issues. That's not fake, it's fact. What better feedback could a seller ask for? A lot of buyer feedback might be dependent on the buyer simply having a bad day and using the feedback to vent. I'll take positive feedback any day of the week, automatic or otherwise. Now, I don't know who are the three silly people who thumbs up this particular rebuttal, but this was a really bad take from Second Chance Picker because he doubled downs again on the whole collusion aspect. Would you trust an auto repair shop that puts hundreds of reviews on Google to pump up their numbers that say car was repaired and works? Kind of takes the truth out of reviews, but not sure how it'll affect buyers' trust. Thank you for watching and sharing. Right. Again, you are in the area of collusion because you're saying that people are pumping up their own feedbacks here, but that's not what's actually happening on eBay right now. So this is not a good take, not a good rebuttal at all. So other people reply, Captain Weirdbeard says, was the car repaired and working though? And then Jonathan replies with, yes, if I knew all of those cars were properly repaired. And then Noob says, exactly. Our company has hundreds of customers every month, but I only get one positive Google review every 2 or 3 months. People only leave feedback when they are pissed. Automatic or not, if I saw 800 completed jobs to 1 negative, I would assume it's still a good company despite the negative one. Exactly. This is exactly how actual buyers feel. That, look, if these people are being compliant, that's great. And most people are really not rushing out to leave reviews when everything went smoothly. People usually leave the whole buyer beware complaint more often than the positive one, right? So Double R here says, I want the feedback. I'm not a big seller, maybe 10 things a month. Out of those 10, maybe 1 or 2 will leave feedback. So if someone looks at my feedback and see 1 review in a month, 5 to 8 in 6 months, they might not buy from me. So if that gets boosted to 10 a month, so it's like 60 over 6 months, that's a big thing for me. What is wrong with eBay showing how many no issue orders a seller has done? I completely agree with this. Buyers still can go and change it and leave positive feedback worded how they want or change it to neutral or negative. A majority of sellers feel this is good change, some not like yourself. So a lot of people are really not vibing with this. I want to give a shout out to the people who spoke up in the comments in a constructive manner. You are truly helping to keep this community accountable. So the same pattern shows up in today's argument about feedback. The claim is auto-generated positive feedbacks dilutes what used to be customer-written feedback. And so the conclusion is, well, I guess thank you cards just don't matter anymore. Well, let's actually think about buyer psychology here, because there was a couple of really smart people who pointed out in his own comments of how buyers genuinely feel and what is legit. Look, buyers don't read shiny praise phrases and then feel even more reassured. What they really care about is the compliance rating, a form of risk assessment when dealing with a stranger. If I see you're at 98% or higher, I know I've got less than a 2% chance of a bad experience. That's enough for me to take a risk. But if I see you hovering at 87%, now I have to start scanning those negatives about items not arriving, not as described, broken parts. That's what matters. So the real signal buyers are looking for isn't sentiment, it's reliability. So I'm gonna make 2 points here where I want the viewers to compare and contrast the reseller's mindset versus the perspective of a business professional. When I look back at the new feedback system, I see through the lens of compliance. What does a seller owe the buyer? 3 things: ship on time, package it properly, and deliver the item as described. Price isn't even really a factor because that was agreed upon at the moment of purchase. But what does the buyer owe the seller? To inspect the item within a reasonable time of delivery, because nothing's worse than someone popping up 3 weeks later or past the return window, then claiming a problem, often resulting in lingering resentment or retaliation. So in this framework, the auto feedback isn't about thank you for the extra effort. It's confirmation of compliance. It's proof both sides fulfilled their obligations and move on clean. That helps to expedite transactions, build platform trust, and strengthens confidence for future buyers, and sellers absolutely benefit from that. Now here's another angle you may not have considered. This new auto feedback system actually reveals a lot more than people realize. Starting September 3rd, every transaction now translates into feedback, which means by October 3rd, you can literally tally someone's positives, neutrals, and negatives and know exactly how many transactions they've done that month. Now, if they're selling multi-quantity stuff, the math will get a little bit fuzzy, but single quantity type listings, this becomes especially accurate. So for most sellers, this is essentially a window into their monthly sales. Now, as a private labeler myself, I see this as a double-edged sword because on one hand, it gives you more transparency into your competitors, but on the other hand, it also exposes your own. All right, guys, so time for a little bit of final thoughts. Look, every single business struggles between the balance of stability and growth. Stability is a comfort zone of repeating what works, while growth means taking on more risks and sacrificing some of that comfort for progress. So while I often criticize that the problem with reselling is that it's an inefficient time sink, because the model is too simplistic and manual, you end up spending all of your time in the trenches because there just aren't enough systems at play. That fatigue eats away at your bandwidth and leaves you no space to think like an entrepreneur. However, in the beginning, we all have to start somewhere. So during your learning phases, the inefficiencies are to be expected. That's the price for growth, both personal or business. Now, it's you who needs to make time for yourself to think strategically. I recommend at least 45 minutes each morning. Now, personally, as an established business owner, I am more removed from the daily physical tasks. So I am able to carve out about 90 minutes every single day just to think, reflect, and plan. Because when you do, you stop being busy just for the sake of being busy and you start focusing on what actually moves the needle. Because today's argument isn't even a situation that you could opt out of or counteract on, so you really shouldn't even be dwelling on it. Anyways, guys, that is the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a big like. And if you learned something, please consider subscribing. As always, I'll see you guys in the next. Take care.